It sounds so cool. Hey everybody, it's Mike here from The Art of Guitar. I'm here with another artist series, and the reason I'm excited for this one is because it's been forever since I've done one. I think the last one, I don't even know who it was for. I think maybe it was for Tom Scholes or something. Anyhow, I got the idea to do this Mike Campbell series about a month ago, but I've been so tied up recording lesson videos for my website that I just haven't been able to get to it yet. By the way, if you ever want to learn guitar or bass from me, check it out at the addresses below. I just put up 100 more lesson videos the other month, so that's what I was busy doing. But as soon as I hit 100 videos, I came right back to this artist series idea, and I just had so much fun practicing in order to bring you these techniques, because I learned a whole bunch just by studying them. I subbed in for a band one time that played Mary Jane's Last Dance, and that's a real common song for cover bands, but I learned a whole bunch of details that I never did back in the day when I was studying it, and I just wanted to show you a few that maybe you didn't know either. So at the top of the song, we all know this part, right? However, did you know that there's a whole bunch of natural harmonics that Mike's doing? It's kind of interesting that this is like a layer over the top of that part. If you don't believe me, listen to it right now, and there's no way you won't be able to unhear it once you hear it. That's a prime example of just doing something relatively simple that really adds to the context of the beginning. Because when it's not there, it just doesn't sound right anymore. I really love the grittiness of the solo part that he does, even though, once again, it's very simple in a way. Those are going to be your double stop bends where you can actually take your finger and bar it across two strings. Pull the strings down, and what's cool about that when you do the bend is one of the strings bends more than the other string. So the third string will bend more than the second string. Gives it a real distinct sound. It also fattens it up quite a bit, because if it was just one string, it just doesn't have that frequency fighting sound that really fills the space in a great way. One huge bummer about being in that band, subbing for that band, was that the singer was the leader of the band, and he was kind of like this moody guy. He was kind of mad all the time. So he would play the chorus wrong for the song. It's supposed to be in E minor, and then the vocals come in on the D note, creates this cool E minor 7 sound. Last dance with Mary Jane. But he insisted that it was an E major. So it made the chorus sound way happier than it was supposed to. So it sounded something like this. 3, 4. Last dance with Mary Jane. One more time to kill the pain. And when I tried to correct him, he got really mad at me, so I just learned to shut my mouth in that band. By the way, I only played 2 shows, so it wasn't a huge deal. Speaking of that part, another great thing that Mike Campbell does is he's able to do these fills that are simple in concept, but really do the job. So in this case, they go to A major. He slides up to an A triad. And then he does these dyads going up just with A triad notes. So instead of playing the full triads all the way up, he just takes 2 of the notes and it really fills it up. On the website, I make it an exercise for everybody to play an open chord and then play the corresponding triads climbing up the neck for this very purpose. So for example, if it was D, you could go, and I always have some sort of fill that you could throw in. Now, I'm not always sure if it's Tom or Mike that writes these certain parts, but I'm sure they always collaborated. When it comes to the beginning of Breakdown, which is such a cool tune, this intro, this melodic intro with a bunch of slides, it's pretty simple, but it's one of those things that once you hear it, it sticks in your head forever. Plus, it's really fun to play that. And then he tops it off with... So everything's very pentatonic based in this part. So the ability to write these signature melody lines is just incredible. One thing that I noticed that Mike Campbell does sometimes whenever he's doing some blues licks is he tends to do this cool little up bend with his index finger. A lot of us go like this and pull it down. If you watch him, he'll push up, which results in a little bit of a different sound. So up Choose whatever direction you want, obviously, but I kind of like that up feel a little bit. I'm not sure why. It just gives us this different sort of vibe. It seems more like Clapton-y or something. I don't know. People have said this since day one to me, and it took forever for me to finally learn my lesson on it. They'll say stuff like, it's what you don't play sometimes that's important. And that really rings true when it comes to how powerful the power chords are when they finally come in. So Mike Campbell isn't doing this the whole time. So the reason why these power chords are so powerful, if you will, is because he's laying back the entire time. And then when it finally kicks in, he also doesn't oversaturate his tone, so it's even more powerful. The more distortion you use, sometimes it gets, dissolved into the mix a little bit. But because he has such a raw tone, when he does do those power chords, it just kicks you in the stomach. So learn when to not play so that when you do play, it's that much more impactful. So in Breakdown, he does this really great open E string pedal tone, which he does a lot in Refugee as well. But check this out. So when you use the high E string as a pedal tone, it really doubles your sound and creates all these frequency fights. So it's like, without it, it's very sterile. With it, you open up that Stevie Ray Vaughan kind of vibe. This might be the greatest example of doing more with less, and that is just using one note for an entire intro of a song. Now, it's kind of cheating to say that because it's actually 3 octaves of the same note, but it's D, D, and D. So you probably know. We used to play this live, the crowd would go crazy. This is a different band, by the way. And what's so cool is to take one note, essentially, and just play at a certain rhythm, and then have the bass come in with all the other notes. It's a really great idea. Sometimes I'd like to challenge myself and say, could I write a cool thing with just one note? And it's way harder than I thought. Okay, let's add one more note to that and just say 2 notes now. So for the beginning of the solo, he's really riding on 2 notes for the most part. He does do this slide, but for the most part, he's sticking with the D and the F sharp. So it was always fun to play this one live for a couple reasons. I love the idea of the simplicity of the solo at first, but he does this, by the way. So he does that a couple more. But then when it kicks in to the really insane pull-off part, it's very challenging. So he'll go from something relatively easy. By the way, it's not easy to make it sound good. It's easy to play on paper, but to actually bring it to life, you have to really put, a lot of energy into it. But when it comes to this pull-off part, I had to practice quite a bit to a metronome to get into the pocket with that. So he does this really great Travis picking. It's a great technique, and it's really cool how it follows the chord progression. So it's just D, E, G. That's when it changes the shape a little bit. The last one's A. So don't sleep on Mike Campbell's technique because, at first he'll just do all the right moves for the song and then he'll punch you in the face with something like that. It's good to keep people on their toes a little bit. In the song I Need to Know, during the chorus, there's this really cool thing that I love to do myself. I learned this from people like Mike Campbell. And that's where if you're playing chords, especially power chords, if you add some open strings that are just sitting there anyway, sometimes it can really fill up the sound and add new colors to your chords. Does that sound great? So anytime you're playing something and it sounds a little bit thin, see if you can add some open strings to it. You're going to find that you can always add at least 1 or 2 somewhere. There's a ton of Chuck Berry in a lot of guitar players, by the way. But with Mike Campbell, you really hear it come through. In this song, he's doing the old double stop, but sliding into it from 1 fret below, which gives it the old... So you probably hear thousands of artists when I do that. Everyone from the Beatles to the Stones, everybody does this, right? So that rhythm's actually very much Guns N' Roses too, but that sounds so great. It just screams out at you. Was that dude looks like a lady? It's become sort of an ongoing joke, but every single artist series I've done has had a unison bend in it because everybody uses them. So this is a simple way to thicken things up. I think a lot of people already know. It's where you leave one note static and then you bend the other one up to the same pitch. But then you play them together. So what Mike Campbell's good at doing, besides doing unison bends, is staggering them, but also doing it a certain way. So stagger like... That's very Chuck Berry, obviously. But Mike Campbell's really good at leaving that ring finger note down instead of lifting up. So lifting up, leaving it down, you get more of a fight. It's funny how something so dissonant can be so musical in the context of certain songs. So add that little detail of keeping that ring finger down, and I think it's really going to thicken up your sound quite a bit. Listen to Her Heart has a lot of great lessons in it. The first thing I love, I think this is more of a Tom Petty thing, is how in the beginning, it's really just what I call a chord form riff. That's where you don't have to move. You just make one chord shape and you're really lifting off your pinky, and that's all you're doing. Talk about songs you could play in the nursing home. You know, if you're sitting there, maybe you have arthritis or something, you could still play the intro to this tune. Now, other chord form riffs like I Feel Fine, that's a little bit more difficult because you have to stretch like that. My hand would probably break if I was 90 years old doing that. The solo is a great example of minimalists playing, which is in this case following the vocal line. And, you know, people of all bands do this, and it always seems to be very effective. You know, I think one of the first real obvious versions of this was Smells Like Teen Spirit, but we have this going on in this tune. So if it was just the single string, it would be this. It sounds like they double it in the studio to give it this really cool chorusing effect, but live I'm noticing that Mike Campbell's adding the high E string to get that, you know, E pedal tone once again. So don't be afraid to copy the vocals once in a while. There's a reason why the song is so legendary. It's because it's got such a great melody and it's being played by two different instruments, a voice and a guitar. All right, let's talk Refugee. This is probably one of my favorite ones to play live. We used to play it in this college town in Michigan and the kids would go crazy, even for a song that was this old. Okay, so the main chords are F sharp, A, and E. I think a lot of people know that. Sounds great. Be sure to connect it like this. I love it. It's kind of like Crazy Train in a way. Okay, now speaking of taking from something else in the song, so before we talked about the vocal line for the Listen to Her Heart solo, but for this, the solo part or the melody above the main rhythm follows the chords. So listen to this. So if you're not really sure what to do and you have to add a second part, sometimes it's cool to take from the feel of the main rhythm. So, okay. Then just add whatever embellishments. So it's a great idea as a secondary guitar player to be able to follow vocals as well as the movement of the chords sometimes for ideas. There's this really great call and response section during the bridge, and that's where they hit chords and then they'll do a corresponding lick to kind of answer it. It goes back and forth in a great way like this. E. So that's just a little lick based in E. So A. D, then it just goes back to E. Call and response is always a cool thing to try because it's like you're playing along to yourself, you're jamming with yourself. So if you hit a chord and then play a corresponding lick, you could have a lot of fun just experimenting a little bit. But if you stayed with this concept, it would be like... So I just use that triad climb again just to show you that all this stuff can work together. It seems like whenever I'm improvising and I'm supposed to do little fills during a song, I tend to go overboard and try to do things that are impressive or just, challenging. But sometimes I forget that the most musical thing you could do sometimes can be basic, if you will. Something like this. So that is a guitar fill in Refugee. You probably recognize it. That's all it is, just a slide like that. And then later he changes it up a little bit. It's subtle yet effective. You could kind of see a theme for today, I'm sure. I just talked about trying to do too much as a guitar player sometimes. It's a very common thing. Sometimes in a song like in Here Comes My Girl, when it comes to a part that's supposed to have a solo, sometimes it's okay just to play a really cool lick and repeat it 4 times. That's what he does. So he goes something like this. Isn't that wild? That's all he does. It creates this really interesting F sharp 7 add 11 type sound, which I think would have made a really great intro for the song too. Maybe something like boom, then they kick in. I love the song called Even the Losers because the lyric is, even the losers get lucky sometimes. Back in junior high, my friend and I would sing that to each other anytime something good would happen to us. So let's say like a girl smiles at my friend or something, we'd be like, yeah, see, even the losers get lucky sometimes. Those junior high years were so much fun. Okay, I talked about unison bends before, but one thing that you could do with them is this ultimate Chuck Berry lick, which is this. That's combining that idea of a unison bend with the double stop, right? But now let's add back in that idea of holding the ring finger down. See with that extra note? It really gets pretty intense. Instead of, we're getting this. The coolest part is as the chords change, you could follow them. So from A is right here, we can go to D up here. And that sound just never gets old to me. It just always seems to hit the spot. But on here I wrote, get a ton of mileage out of that Chuck Berry bend, because that's what he does in this solo. If you listen to it, it's pretty much just that the entire time. For Don't Do Me Like That, there's a really important technique that I learned way back when I was trying to play, was it Kiss or Skynyrd, I think? That's gonna be your circular pattern like this. But there are little details that you want to pay attention to, because you could go like this. See how I'm leaving my ring finger down that time? It doesn't always create the right tonality that you want. A lot of the times you have to get off of that note and go like this. So be careful that you don't leave the finger down. Unlike the unison bend, sometimes you got to take it off. Now here's another cool thing. If you pick it correctly, you can actually hit both notes at the end like this. To give it even more sound, okay? Versus just cutting everything off and being like, that could be a little too individualized, which is okay for some country. You know, if you're going like, that's fine. But if you want something to like fill space, sometimes you want to do that. So get that circular thing down as tight as you can. All right, one of the earliest songs I ever heard was You Got Lucky. It was on MTV when I was a little kid. And I loved the way that the intro comes in so subtly. You know, the rest of the band is already in. The synths are playing. It's such a cool sound. And then Mike Campbell just comes in when he needs to with the lead part. Kind of like I talked about with the power chords before. Sometimes if you wait, when you do come in, it's so satisfying. So this whole part. It's just a little pentatonic lick, but thrown in the right spot, it's very effective. So the band is kicked in, and all of a sudden you just wait, and then. I like that little high flutter at the end like that too. Sets the table for the vocals, basically. Okay, this is a big one. He does that really wild vibrato part during the solo, and I know he used like a magnetone amp, so possibly there's an effect going on there too, but I've seen him live do it with just his fingers. But I also saw him use the trem bar as well. I'm going to call it the barbrato today because, it's actually vibrato happening, not tremolo. So I'll call it a barbrato technique. So with just your fingers, it's pretty intense to have to go like this. Although he does it really well. With the bar, it's pretty intense because you have to keep that thing moving. And hopefully your guitar's set up well so it doesn't go completely whacked out after this, but... Wow, my sleeve button was really going to town right there. Okay, I get to grab a special guitar right now. All right, check this thing out. I think this is actually what Mike Campbell uses live for this specific song. I'm sure you guys already guessed what it is, but I love the fact that he uses one. It sounds so cool. So this is one of the strangest tunes Tom Petty has ever written. I mean, it's got this wild drum loop in the beginning and then a sitar. And it's just a weird song, but it was a huge hit. I do love that signature intro. I mean, this whole is unmistakable. But then this part, when it kicks in, it just sounds so open and trippy. I like that little rake sound. Okay, what a strange but beautiful thing happening there. Let's switch guitars again. I felt the need to talk about his slide technique because he and George Harrison, they were friends and they would play together a lot. Sometimes it's hard to know if George Harrison didn't come in and just like lay down a quick slide track for one of the songs. But as far as I know, Mike Campbell did the slide parts. But there's something really cool about his slide technique that I have to show you. So right away, whenever I do slide, I put my thumb in the back and I put my fingers back here to help mute the strings as I slide. So that's kind of how I do it. But what he does is he takes his thumb and puts it over the front of it. And what's great about that is it actually sits right here on your thumb and it allows you to do this wild vibrato that he does all the time for slide. So if you ever listen to his slide stuff, you really hear this exaggerated vibrato. I think a lot of that is because the neck is sitting on his thumb right at a spot that allows you to push it back and forth. It's like sort of not a fulcrum, but it's a really cool pivot point, if you will, like that. So if you were to go... I'm still working on it. It feels so weird to do it like that. I'm so used to the thumb behind like that. The trickiest part is not having anything to mute the strings with, which I'm so used to. There's a cool technique where you actually start to use semi-palm muting. So instead of going all out like this, for free falling, to get a little bit of grit but also tone, move your hand back a little bit, just get like a half semi-palm mute. So not too little, it's too open, not too tight. Becomes Stacy's Mom, do you know that song? But halfway. It's a great thing to practice. It's like a dynamic of palm muting. Okay, Running Down a Dream. I remember practicing this a ton when I was first learning guitar because it's such a fun line to do. So these single line heavy riffs are huge in, Tom Petty's world. They'll just come out of nowhere. So this part. But one of my favorites is a song called Honeybee. This riff just grinds. Just because they're single notes does not mean it's not heavy. Okay, this is a technique I've never done before. I thought I played all the pentatonic licks in my life, but he does this at the end of Running Down a Dream. So it's a unison bend, and then he does this cool triplet pull-off as he unbends. Watch this. Isn't that cool? So practice that. I try to use Travis picking. It just doesn't work for me as well. So I'm picking everything, but I am doing that pull off with a pinky. So cool technique to throw. Okay, everyone, so that is the Mike Campbell techniques. Hopefully you learned a thing or two. I know even though I thought I knew all of his techniques, I learned a lot just by the little details that were in there. So do me a favor and try to throw some of this into your playing and see how much, I guess, more effective it can be. If anything, it allows you to play less, but get more out of it. So that's the theme of today, doing more with less. Okay, thank you so much for watching, everyone, and we will catch you at the next video. Bye-bye.